All right, so today I want to pull up and draw your attention to a couple articles that we have found. We are constantly looking for what's happening around us and what's going on specifically here in the States, but we're also looking at international global effects of DEI components. And we ran across two articles, both regarding Alabama. And what I want to do right now is just kind of talk through some of these and again, provide some insight for us to consider. Now, the first one we're going to pull up here is the idea of Alabama restricting and really bringing back the idea of don't say gay education restrictions. So I'm sure many of us remember the don't ask, don't tell policy that was here in the States in our government forces. And that policy we learned was extremely oppressive. It was the I don't want to know about it, but I also don't want you to tell me about it. And when we're talking about don't say gay education, it's really furthering those restrictions and bringing back some of the oppressive pieces that we've seen in our history, specifically around sexuality. Now, this bill is aimed further at both gender identity and sexuality, but really it's so important for us to look at whether or not it is something that we need to tell people they can't talk about. And I'm going to personally stand right here and say, no, we absolutely need to have open conversations. Here at US², we talk all the time about we don't have to agree with everything everyone believes, but we cannot restrict someone else from having the opportunity to share who they are and to be authentic. Now, also in Alabama, what's extremely interesting is that both in Alabama, again, but the governor in Alabama, Governor Kay Ivey, has been signing bills banning all public dollars from any DEI work. Now, this article is specifically regarding colleges, but Senate Bill 129, Kay Ivey, Alabama governor, is basically saying that they're banning institutions, and I'm going to read directly from the article here, from maintaining DEI offices. So they cannot have a DEI office at college campuses anymore. And they're also banning institutions from teaching what the bill calls quote unquote divisive concepts about race and identity, including discussions of whether quote slavery and racism are aligned with the founding principles of the United States. I want to read that again. It is banning institutions from teaching discussions of whether slavery and racism are aligned with the founding principles of the United States. Slavery was a huge part of our U.S. history. And if we don't talk about slavery, and if we don't talk about both the ramifications as well as how it came to be, we're never going to learn from that. So we don't want to talk about our American history because slavery has to do with our American history. So what this bill is saying is, let's not talk about things that really created the country we live in, because without slavery, we would not be where we are today. And we need to talk about all of those pieces, good, bad, indifferent. And it authorizes state agencies to discipline or terminate employees or contractors who violate the law. So anyone who talks about this, right now, we don't have any clients in Alabama. But if we did have a client in Alabama, technically, because I'm talking about this right now, I would be able to be terminated. My question for all of you is, when is free speech allowed and when is free speech not allowed? If we need to talk about our U.S. history, then I think we need to talk about all components of our U.S. history, both those things that put certain people in a positive light and those things that put certain people in a negative light. Because, as we say here at US², it is not about shame, blame, pointing the finger, polarizing us. It's not about looking at our past and having blame or shame around that. It is about looking at our past so that we don't continue the same mistakes of our past. I know all of us, every single one of us, can probably look back in history and say at least one thing that we think we probably could have been done a little bit differently. So why can't we talk about that openly in schools? Especially this article talks specifically about colleges. in college, people are at that age where we absolutely need to talk about everything, no matter how uncomfortable. Now, we're going to get into concepts and topics further on where I actually think conversations around inclusion and equity need to happen starting as early as 3 years old. But right now, in this article, we're talking about college. And we need to really think twice about all of the banning of DEI programs, DEI officials, and DEI courses. And really, it's not even about DEI courses, it's about authentic history courses. So let's take a look. I would love to hear from those of you who might live in Alabama, because these are two pretty interesting articles and findings and bills that are being passed specifically in Alabama. If you're in Alabama, we'd love to hear about it. If you're not in Alabama, tell us whether you agree or disagree, or whether you would like to live there or not live there.